Good evening, families. Hello. We're going to let y'all trickle in for a little bit, and then we will get started. Hey, great. Well, good evening, families. My name is Justin Barker, one of the associate directors in the Office of New Student and Family Programs. I hope y'all are having an awesome evening, and thank you all so much for joining us. Y'all, we're gearing up for some winter weather over here in Durham. So if y'all are, I hope y'all have gotten y'all's milk, bread, eggs, all the things. But so excited that you all joined us here this evening. Y'all, we are here this evening to talk about the 2025-2026 housing process. I want to give y'all any tips and tricks just to learn all about the process and what your students are about to go through, because I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it opened today. Exciting. So y'all gonna learn all those things and just how you all can be a support to your students. So our friends over in Housing Assignments came to talk to us this evening. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to our friend. So Krista, take it away.
Awesome, Justin. Thank you so much for coordinating this for us this evening. Hello, everyone. My name is Krista Jade. I'm the Associate Director in Housing Assignments. And so tonight I'll be going over the 25-26 housing process, as Justin shared. I'll be talking about the process generally from all the class years perspectives. And tonight we're going to be using the Q&A function. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. There are other staff here from Housing Assignments tonight that will be assisting in answering those questions. So you don't have to wait until the very end unless you want to. You're welcome to kind of start with those questions, and I can also tackle some along the way as we're presenting. So first and foremost, our agenda. I'll talk about the timeline, blocking definitions and rules, lottery numbers and how they work, some information about the quads, specifically the quads for our juniors and seniors, because there's some new things happening this year. And so even if you have a rising sophomore, these are things that they can look forward to in their junior and senior year. We'll be talking about some specialty groups. So if they're in LLCs, if they have a housing accommodation for student disability, etc. And then some resources that are available to your students kind of along the way through the housing process. So here's the timeline. February 18th, which is today, the application opened. Before I left the office just a bit ago, we already had over 1,000 applications. So your kiddos are doing exactly what they need to do for the housing application. They do have to submit the application by Friday at 12 p.m. noon. So if they are enrolled in classes, in Durham for the fall semester, and they are a rising sophomore or rising junior, they're required to live on campus with us, which means they have to submit that housing application. They can submit the application today and then go back and edit the application as many times as they want to. So we, tell folks just get it done today. Make sure you make it all the way to that finish button, and I'll show you some resources also at the end so they know that the application was fully submitted. But get that application fully submitted, and then you can go back and and edit it as many times as you need to. So once they submit the application this week, it's kind of smooth sailing. There's not a whole lot that they need to do until after they return from spring break. So on March 17th, our rising juniors and seniors will learn what quad they have been allocated to. So I'll talk a little bit about what that means, but all of our juniors and seniors get allocated to a specific quad, and then they pick their room through the room selection process in the quad that they've been allocated to. So they'll know exactly where they're living on that date. I'll be honest, the quad allocation outcome tends to be the most kind of emotionally charged day of our housing process, if there is one. So sometimes students get really disappointed in the quad that they've been allocated to, or really excited, and either way, those emotions can be big. And so we do our best to make sure that we are ready and available to support those students as they process what their quad allocation means once they get that. And for our rising sophomores, they already know what quad they're living in next year. So this 17th date does not apply to them. For our rising juniors and seniors, they can also well, and sophomores too, they have an opportunity to reblock. And so what that means is on their current application that they submit this week, they will be forming a block. But lots of things actually can change between now and a month from now. Student study away programs get finalized. Students might receive an accommodation for a specific type of room, etc. Changes happen. And so from the 17th to 20th, students can reblock with the folks that have been allocated to their quad. That process is most, I think, beneficial for our rising juniors and seniors, because now they know exactly who's going to be living in their quad, and that might impact exactly what they want their block to look like. And so they can participate in that reblocking process. And then on March 25th, everyone will receive their room selection time slot. So it gets emailed to them via their Duke email address. So that will tell them the exact date and time they need to go into the housing portal and select their room. So we don't pick the rooms for them. The students participate in the room selection themselves. And so on that date and time, they'll see all the vacancies that exist within their quad that they've been allocated to, and they can pick into any room at that point in time that they want to. So we're getting a lot of questions from students right now of how do I preference a single room on the housing application? Well, you don't. We don't predetermine the singles that go out to students for the general room selection process. So when their time slot opens up, if there's a single room open for them, they can jump right into that space. Hopefully they weren't planning on a preferred roommate and are now leaving them hanging, but they are welcome to select into that single room right away. No matter what, even if a student is displeased with their quad allocation, they have to pick a room within the quad that they've been allocated to, and then they can always apply for a reassignment in June. So I don't have that piece in here, but the reassignment application opens up on June 1st, and it stays open for the entire, well, for the first few weeks of June. And so as long as they submit that reassignment application, we can take a look and see what we can do to get them into a space that they are more content with. So that's the timeline in a nutshell. Really, the most important part right now is just making sure students apply for housing by that 12 p.m. noon deadline. And we cut it off in the middle of the day on Friday so that we have an opportunity to really support students who might have missed that deadline. If we did it at midnight, I'm asleep. I'm not there to help them navigate what happens next, since they missed that deadline. So I really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to be present and available for students who might have missed the deadline or maybe didn't submit the application exactly how they had intended to. So that allows us the opportunity to really be present for them. So 12 p.m. noon lunchtime is when that deadline hits on Friday. Folks who are studying away for the fall semester, usually this is our junior class, but there certainly are some sophomores and seniors who do as well. If they're studying away for the fall semester, then they need to decline housing this week instead of applying. So tomorrow we'll receive a list from Global Education for anyone who has an active study away application, and you're not allowed to have both active at the same time. So you can't have a study away application and you can't have a housing application active at the same time. You kind of have to put all of your eggs in one basket and see what happens. So we'll keep getting lists from Global Ed. And on March 5th, if students still have a study away application live, then we will cancel the housing application. So we want students to be in control of their process, and therefore we want them to decline housing on their own. But otherwise, we will go in on March 5th and cancel. And we will send many emails leading up to that March 5th timeline for those students to their Duke email account, letting them know that the deadline's approaching and what they need to do with Global Education. So those students studying away in the fall, then they will apply for housing in October of the fall semester, and then they'll learn of their assignment for the spring in November. So a bit of information just kind of generally about the application. We've already talked about how they need to submit the application this week before 12 p.m. noon on Friday. The date and time they submit their application has zero impact on the room selection time slot. So they can keep resubmitting it every day if they need to until they get it exactly right. They can edit the application anytime until it closes down at noon. And students will receive a confirmation email and their Duke email account once the application has been submitted. So when I say email, I specifically mean their Duke email account. That's the only address that we communicate with officially. And so every time they click finish on the application, they will get a confirmation email of their submissions for that application. And then they'll also see, which I'll show you here in a moment, a date populate on their student status page on the housing portal. Excuse me. And so all of the students who are eligible to live on campus with us for the fall have already received an email from us letting them know that the application's open. We've actually been communicating with them since the beginning of January regarding this process. So this isn't the first email they've received about housing and what they need to do and what to expect. They've had multiple emails from us since beginning of January. We also have facilitated I think 6 information sessions at this point in time, virtual, and we've put the recordings for those information sessions up on the housing portal. So students can go and access those information sessions right now if they want to, and we go into very thorough detail about the application and what to expect. So now I want to talk about blocking and some specific rules as it relates to blocking. So a block is basically a roommate group. So who are the folks that students want to live next to or with? That is what a block serves. And so a block can have 2 to 8 members within it. 2 students can apply for housing as a 2-person block. So a lot of our rising sophomores will form blocks with just themselves and their preferred roommate, and it's just a block of 2 people, and that's exactly as it should be, or can be, I should say. They're certainly welcome to form a block of up to 8 members if they choose to. But all block members must complete the housing application by noon. So being a member of a block doesn't mean you're handing all power over to the block leader to do everything for you. That's not how it works. Students still have to fully submit the application on their own. Blocks can be comprised of students of any gender, and invitations must be accepted to be a member of a block. So sometimes, unfortunately, we will have students receive an invite to join a block and they submit the housing application, but they never go back and accept that invite. And if that invite's not accepted, then we don't know that it is a mutually agreed upon block membership. So students must accept that block invite when they receive it. The benefit of blocking is that students will be assigned the same room selection time slot. So for sophomores, rising sophomores, that's really the benefit, is that they'll get the same room selection time slot on March 25th. So they will be able to go into the room selection portal at the exact same date and time and make a collective decision about where everyone is going to live based upon the vacancies that exist at that moment in time. So for sophomores, that's really the only benefit blocking provides. For our rising juniors and seniors, blocking gives you the best opportunity for everyone to be allocated to the same quad. So if everyone in the block really wants to get into 300 Swift, the only way they can ensure that happens, the only way that they can have the best chance for that to occur is if they form a block, rank 300 Swift as their top choice, and then hopefully they get allocated together to 300 Swift. Blocks, though, may need to choose rooms in different suites across floors or buildings based upon a vacancies available at the student's room selection time slot. So what does that mean? If I'm a block of 4, there's nothing in the system that controls how my block of 4 picks into rooms. So if everyone before me who had an earlier room selection time slot picks all of the singles and there's no singles left, then my block of 4 will have to split up into doubles. Now, there's no guarantee either that there will be 2 fully vacant doubles for us to pair up nicely into each room. More often than not, that's the case. It does work out that way. But if we have a really late time slot for our quad, we're really filling in the gaps. We're filling in the spots wherever the vacancies exist. And we may have to split, if there's 4 of us, across 4 different rooms. Now, we at Duke greatly value students being able to live with their preferred roommate. We prioritize that above everything else. And so if students are split during the room selection time slot, or their room selection process, they do need to pick into a bed and have an assignment, but then they'll apply for reassignment in June. And we're often very successful at getting roommate pairs together. So if it unfortunately happens for your student where they're not able to select into a space and live with their preferred roommate, then let them know it's okay, pick into the bed that's available to them, and then apply for reassignment over the summer, and we'll work to get them both together. So that's what blocking looks like in a nutshell. For sophomores, it gives everyone the same room selection time slot. For juniors and seniors, it gets them allocated to the same quad, whatever that might be, and then they participate in room selection together as well. So let's talk a little bit about lottery numbers. So Duke favors a seniority system. And so what that means is that seniors, so this year, the class of 26, will get the lowest best lottery numbers, then juniors, and then sophomores. I talk a little bit here about mixed class year blocks. So if there's juniors and seniors in the same block, then they'll receive lottery numbers after the last all junior block. So we favor the seniors first. And then lottery numbers are used both for quad allocation if they're a junior or senior, and for the room selection time slot. So if there's a block of 6, whoever has the best individual lottery number, best meaning lowest, then that block takes on, the entire block takes on that lottery number. And that is the number we will use to determine the order in which folks are allocated to quads, and then the order in which students are allowed to select into their room. So the room selection time slots will be assigned based upon those lottery numbers as well. All right, I'm going to talk briefly about the quads for our upper class students, for our juniors and seniors, and some changes that are existing there. So first we have 300 Swift. 300 Swift, majority of all 300 Swift are double occupancy bedrooms within either 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments. So there's 2-bedroom, 4-person apartments, and then there's 1-bedroom, 2-person apartments at 300 Swift. If a block is allocated to 300 Swift, again, it does not guarantee a certain number of beds available within apartments. Usually at 300 Swift, students are pretty good about not splitting up across a bunch of apartments, and so it leaves good opportunities for blocks to be with at least their preferred roommate in apartments as they're going through the room selection time slot. And then we will have some graduate students living at 300 Swift next year, which is a change from this current academic year. And then 301 Swift. So this is directly across the street from 300 Swift. It was graduate housing, but now it's going to be undergraduate housing for the upcoming academic year. And it's a 2-bedroom, 2-person apartment layout. So every apartment at 301 Swift offers only single occupancy bedrooms. It's a bit smaller, well, a lot smaller than 300 Swift. There's only 46 beds total at 301, whereas at 300 you have almost 400 undergraduate beds. But full apartments, full kitchen, you see some pictures here, full-size beds. The beds at 300 Swift are twin XL. Then hollows. So hollows, a change for this year. We are adding some double occupancy bedrooms. So there's only 22. So majority of hollows, 92% of hollows are still single occupancy bedrooms. This has come up a lot today. Your block size does not impact your quad allocation. So blocks of any size can be allocated to any quad. And if your block is allocated to hollows, it does not guarantee, again, a certain number of beds available within suites. So your block may need to split up across multiple suites. 515 beds total. And then the majority of the double rooms at hollows are within 4-bedroom suites. So almost all of them are in 4-bedroom suites, making them 5-person suites. And then Blue Light, this is the new building coming online for Duke for the upcoming academic year. Well, new to Duke building. It is a mix of single occupancy and double occupancy bedrooms. So Blue Light does not have any 1-person, 1-bedroom apartments. They only have 2-bedroom apartments and 3-bedroom apartments. A very small number of the 2-bedroom apartments at Blue Light will be 2-person. The rest of the 2-bedroom apartments will be 3-person. So there'll be 1 single room and 1 double room. And then all of the 3-bedroom apartments at Blue Light will be 4-person apartments. So there'll be 2 single occupancy bedrooms and then 1 double occupancy bedroom. Okay, so now I'm going to dive into a little bit about our specialty groups. So living learning communities. So LLC members went through kind of a separate application process to be a part of an LLC, and then those groups send us the roster of who those members are. So LLC members will go through pre-assignment the week of March 24th. So they will pick their room before the general room selection opens up, and they will only be able to select into the specific location that their LLC members are allowed to live in. So wellness, for example, that's in Wanamaker. Transformative Ideas, for example, would be in Kilgo, specifically in M&N. So they already have received emails regarding the process, what they need to do this week, and where they're allowed to live is by participating in the LLC. And they can only identify preferred roommate from someone else within the LLC. And then we have the faith-based faith-based exception process. So there's a form on the housing portal right now that students can go to, and they can submit a faith-based request. And so any student with approved exceptions will receive a communication from us in early March outlining whether or not they need to participate in pre-assignment to have their exception met. Not all exceptions will require participating in pre-assignment. So for example, if a student has a single room exception and they get allocated a 301 Swift, they can pick the last bed at 301 and still have their exception met. So simply having a faith-based exception does not automatically equate to having the opportunity to participate in pre-assignment. It's only if your exception will require it. The deadline for faith-based exceptions to be utilized during this room selection process was February 12th, and students received emails about this when the process was live and what that deadline was. So it's still live, students can still submit, but if their assignment does not meet their exception that they're approved for, then they would need to apply for reassignment in June. Very similar process for students with housing accommodations from Student Disability and Access Office. The deadline is February 26th. So the accommodation letters from SDAO must be to our office by February 26th. And then same thing, students with accommodations, they'll hear from us in early March, and they may or may not have to participate in pre-assignment. It really depends on their accommodation and the quad that they've been allocated to. For example, we've got quite a few, especially first-year students who have no carpet central air accommodations. And if their quad connection is in Craven, for example, every single bed in Craven will meet that accommodation, even if it's the last bed available in that building. So they would not have to participate in pre-assignment at that point. And then our quad council members, if you have any students who are serving on the quad council for the upcoming academic year, then they also get to participate in pre-assignment, and we've already communicated with them about that process as well. So all of these students still must apply for housing. So if you remember nothing from this presentation tonight, students must apply for housing by the deadline on Friday unless they're studying away for the fall, or unless they're a rising senior, and then they have the choice to live on campus or not. But if they don't submit the application by that deadline, they cannot participate in room selection. So each one of these groups still need to apply for housing regardless. Okay, so I have some resources I'm going to show you all so that you can help direct your students on where to find more information. And then we'll have an opportunity where I will dive in and kind of answer any remaining questions that you might have. So the QR code here will take you to our housing portal. You must have a NetID login to be able to view it, but I did also put the website up here so that you can give it to your student if they don't have it already, but it should be in many of their emails. And I want to show you tonight actually what the portal looks like from the student perspective. So everyone will see this front-facing page here. And then once they select into the housing information applications under the undergraduate section here, The next page they see is class year specific, but right away you can see at the top, it has all of the key dates that are really important to them as a part of this process. So has the application timelines here. It had our information sessions. I still have the link up from the one last night. Oops. But it has when our information sessions were. The links were up here prior to the sessions going live. And then we have some more resources here. So we have our website, which has all of the timeline information on our website, along with details about the quads. Students must be checking their Duke email regularly. That's the only way we communicate with them for official communication, I should say. And then here you can see all the info session that, since I'm class of 26, I can see all the information sessions applicable to me as of class member of 26. So there was a specific one about faith-based exceptions, one about housing accommodations from student disability, one about living learning communities, and then another very specific one for rising juniors and seniors. And then there's information here important for the class of 26. So talks about changes to quads, the class of 28 rising sophomore important information, talks about how they have to apply, talks about a little bit about the room selection process and blocking so they know what to expect since this is their first time through the process. So this page, the first page they see is very class year specific, and then they can click on their student housing status. And this is where they see specific individual information. So I click on this and it tells me right here what my next step is. So as a senior, rising senior, my next step is to decide whether or not I actually want to live on campus. And then it has some information regarding that. If I was a rising junior or rising senior, it would say next required step, apply for housing, and then the dates for that. And then right here, I can see the accommodations, the housing accommodations I have on file. I can see information about me specifically. If I had an LLC membership, that would populate here. If I had faith-based exceptions, that would populate here. And then right down here, under housing application details, if I had applied for housing, a date would populate right here after application status. So if your student says that they applied for housing, say, great, go check your housing student status and make sure it shows a date there. And they should know what that means and be able to navigate here through the portal and see right away, yep, it says February 18th at 4 p.m. I submitted my housing application. And this date will update every time they click finish at the end of that application. Or if I'm declining housing, then same thing. The date will populate here from the moment that I submitted it. And then if I get approved to live off campus, a date will populate here as well. And so this page will update through the process. So after the application closes, when everything is kind of static at that point, it'll show what their roommate block looks like. Once quads get allocated, it'll have quad allocation information on here. It'll have their room selection time slot, etc. So this will continue to evolve as the process moves forward. But going back to this previous page, right here is where they access the application and the decline housing form. And if students have any questions at all, we encourage them please to email us. They can also schedule a Teams meeting with us right here online. They can do it at 4 a.m. if they want to and schedule a meeting with us for the next business day or the day thereafter. So students have already been doing this. Our schedules have been very busy for the last few weeks as students have been having and scheduling meetings with us. So they're certainly taking advantage of that. Please also, I know that our calendars are quite busy with students scheduling meetings with us for the rest of this week. They can email us anytime. That is the absolute quickest way to get a response is via email. I was very pleased today that we were able to respond to emails within 4 hours. It's not going to stay that way as folks continue to email, but we will ensure that students have a response from us within 1 business day when they submit that email this week. And then Friday morning, if they have questions, emailing still the best way to get in contact with us. And all of us will be all hands on deck, making sure that we are getting responses to students absolutely as quickly as we possibly can. So we have been very accessible to students with questions that they have had, and we will continue to be. And there's lots of resources available to them to really figure out some of this information on their own. Okay. All right, let me go back here. All right. Now, that's the conclusion of the planned portion of the presentation. So if you have some questions that haven't been answered yet, please put them in the Q&A at this point, and I'd be happy to answer them. Let's see. Someone asked a question about their rising sophomore. And he doesn't know, he doesn't have a dedicated preferred roommate. He doesn't have one that he's going to be going into the application process with. And so what does the process look like for them? So we get solo applicants all the time. Juniors apply as solo applicants, seniors apply as solo applicants. So there's certainly nothing wrong with doing that. Sophomores who are solo applicants and not a member of a block, the one thing we try really hard to communicate with them is that they should expect to have a roommate though. So even though they're going in through the process without a preferred roommate from the start, they will have to pick into a double room and someone else is going to be living in that bed with them. So the way that that works, the student will apply for housing. They'll receive their room selection time slot just for them. So they'll be the only ones allowed at that date and time to go into their quad and pick a room. Now they'll see all vacancies that exist. We tell rising sophomores singles will not exist. And the reason for that is because seniors will be picking first, and usually they take any remaining singles that exist after accommodations and faith-based exceptions, etc. So the seniors will eat up all the singles that are left for that quad. Then juniors will pick, usually into doubles, and then sophomores will pick, certainly into doubles. And so that solo applicant will go into the room selection process. They'll see all the vacancies. They'll see any rooms that are fully vacant, meaning both beds are still open and have not been assigned yet. So they could pick into one of those. They'll also see, though, any half occupied doubles. So doubles that have one bed assigned, but the second bed has not been assigned. And they'll be able to click and see the preferred name, last name, the class year, and the preferred gender of that student that's currently living and assigned to that room, and make a conscious decision, do I want that person to be my roommate or not? Now, they can pick into that half empty room, or they can pick into the fully vacant double, but someone with a later time slot is going to pick into that room. So when we go through room selection, every single bed has been accounted for a human in some way, shape, or form. So that means that unless a student doesn't participate in room selection, by the time room selection concludes, every single bed is going to be assigned. And so sometimes rising sophomores have the idea that, well, I picked into this room and no one else had picked into it, so it's just going to be mine. And that's just not true. Our occupancy is so high that every bed will be assigned. So solo applicants, totally okay. They'll have a random roommate though. And so just helping them prepare for that mentally is really important. Someone asked, they have a rising sophomore and she knows what quad she will be in, but can she choose where her room is? Absolutely. So she'll get her room selection time slot on March 25th, and it will tell her exactly what date and time between April 1st and April 11th that they need to go into the process and select their room. So yes, they are in control of what room they're picking, to the extent of they're picking from whatever vacancies exist still at that point in time. And one other thing to highlight that I didn't mention previously, on March 25th, they also will have access to the vacancy viewer. So I talked about how there is a pre-assignment process where students with accommodations, LSC members, etc., are picking first. So when that vacancy viewer opens up for general room selection process, students will be able to see exactly what vacancies exist at that point in time, and it will update live. So especially for some of our bigger quads like Eden's, room selection will span 3 nights because there's so many beds in that quad. And so if your student is picking on the second night, they can go and view that vacancy viewer after that first night of picking and see still what is remaining for them. So they can have a really strong plan about what rooms they want to select into once their time slot opens up. Let's see. Someone asked about parking at Blue Light. The actual pass is still being decided, and we don't really have a lot of impact on that. So, any questions about parking need to go to parking and transportation, especially for Blue Light, because I don't think it's solidified yet. At least we have not heard the final outcome of that. Someone is asking clarification about juniors studying abroad in the fall. Will single rooms still be available to those juniors who have previously received a single room accommodation? So we are very successful in meeting accommodations for students who are coming onto campus with us for the spring semester. So as long as they meet the timeline, they apply in October when we ask them to. They usually have 2 weeks, I believe, to submit that housing application. And again, we email them before the application goes live. We email them while the application is live. We email reminders. So as long as they meet that timeline for us as to when we need the application in, then we're very successful in meeting students' accommodations. Good question. Someone asked about juniors studying away in the fall and then living off campus in the spring semester. In the previous, gosh, probably 3 to 4 years, we have facilitated an off-campus lottery for our junior class. That it applies to all juniors, not just juniors coming back from abroad. And so they can participate in that lottery, but it's not a guarantee that it happens every year, nor is it a guarantee that everyone who submits for that lottery is able to be released to live off. So they're still required to live on. They should apply for housing and participate in that process. Or expect to participate in that process regardless. And then if there is an off campus lottery opportunity, we will inform them of that in October. Good question. Someone asked about faith-based exceptions and if the deadline's being extended. It is not. So the deadline was February 12th. Again, they can still submit today or tomorrow or in the next few weeks. It's just that if they are approved for an exception, it's not going to impact their current room selection process. So if when they pick a room in April, it doesn't meet what their faith-based exception is, then they can apply for reassignment over the summer. And the same actually applies for accommodations for student disability accommodations. If a student doesn't receive their accommodation by the February 26th deadline, that is a hard deadline, then they'll still process through the room selection process or still proceed through the room selection process. And then if their room outcome, assignment outcome does not meet their accommodation they received after the deadline, then they'll apply for reassignment over the summer and we'll work to meet their accommodation at that point in time. Excellent. See if there's any more questions here. How are rooms within an LLC assigned or chosen? So the process for LLC's room selection is actually the exact same. It's just on a very micro level compared to the entire quad. So Wellness LLC, for example, they can pick into the entire third floor. And seniors will pick first, then juniors, then sophomores. If there's a mixed class year block, then they'll go before sophomores. So it's the exact same kind of process. It's just on a much smaller scale. Excellent. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll probably hang out here for just a few more minutes to make sure we get all of your questions answered. Does housing choice impact amount of financial aid? The very short answer is yes, typically. I always encourage students to reach out to their financial aid counselor to make sure, but generally, if a student selects into a room that's a higher rate than the double room rate, their aid package will increase to assist in covering the additional cost for housing. There are some aid packages though that don't always do that. And so I don't want to say 100% truth that always happens because it doesn't. So students really need to reach out to their financial aid counselor just to be sure. But in general, yes, that is the case. Um, Someone asked about if you have financial concerns, really what is the best option for students. And if you're not on aid and you have financial concerns, the best option are double rooms on West Campus. So students should be trying to get into their quad connection and then picking into a double room because that is the lowest rate that we have on campus. Housing is always guaranteed. Someone asked if after studying abroad in the fall is housing guaranteed. It is always guaranteed for our rising sophomores and rising juniors. Um, it's also guaranteed for our seniors if they want housing. They're welcome to apply, and we will have a bed for them. Um, Someone asked about the suites and hollows. There are very few what we call standalone single rooms and hollows. So I think there's less than 13 of them. So in a complex that has over 500 beds, 13-ish of those beds are standalone singles, meaning it's a room that is not in a suite. And majority of the time, those rooms go to students who have medical accommodations, housing accommodations from student disability that require that room type. So they're often not available for um, general room selection. But then the suite size after that, we have all variations. We have 2-bedroom, 2-person suites. We have 3-bedroom, 3-person suites. The majority of hollows are 4-bedroom, 4-person suites. Almost all of them, probably 70% of them, are 4-bedroom, 4-person suites. And then we do have a few 5-bedroom, 6-person suites and 5-bedroom, 5-person suites. The summer housing application is currently live. It's on our housing portal. You saw it actually when I showed it before, so they can go and apply right now for summer if they want to. So someone's asking about the accommodation process and how to start that. So you need to go to the Student Disability and Access Office to their website directly. You can start the process immediately online. You will need medical documentation supporting the request. So, and actually your student will need to do it because they have to log in with their net ID, etc., and create an account. But they can start the process online also at like 3 in the morning if that's when they need to do it. And then once they submit their request online, they'll be assigned a case manager that they will meet with virtually to discuss their request and the medical documentation that they have supporting that request. So we don't receive in our office at housing@duke.edu, we don't receive any medical documentation directly. All right. Well, I really appreciate all of your engagement tonight. I hope that you found this useful. Kind of as a quick summary, make sure your students applying for housing this week before the deadline, middle of the day on Friday at 12 p.m. noon. And please direct them to all the resources available to them as they navigate the housing application this week. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Krista. Appreciate it. Family, again, this has been recorded the entire time. So we're hoping to get this recording up on our website here within the next 2 days. I'm actually going to download it as soon as we hit in. But thank you all so much for joining us and hope y'all have a beautiful night. Thank y'all so much. I'm going to stop recording.